Hello, investigators, and welcome to Until the End of Time. My name is Veronica, and it has been a while. Let me just give you a quick update on what's been going on, as well as two new cards that were shown off slash created this week. So let me just start. I know most of you are probably just here for the Arkham content, don't really care that much about what's going on in private life, but for those of you that do care, thank you. As some of you might know, I had an internship lined up. Unfortunately, that internship I wasn't able to complete successfully, which means that despite not being forced to, I decided the best choice for me was to terminate my enrollment at my current education or college. The names here are different than in the other parts of the world, so excuse me for being a little bit vague. Don't want to spend too much time on this. Don't worry too much about that termination. That sounds perhaps very crazy, but I can still go back if I want to. It's just that I don't think that the best way forward for me right now is to continue bashing my head into the brick wall that is the 40-hour-a-week internship that they're expecting of me. I have autism, in case you didn't know that, and it's just making things very difficult for me. There are other ways to potentially check off these requirements that are easier once I've gotten some work experience. And so, starting in September, I am starting a different education that is a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but a little bit smaller scale. And hopefully, that'll get me to a point where I can get the job experience that I need to then finish my college degree. That does mean that from now until September, I have some free time. And one of the things that I like to do with that free time is make YouTube videos because I do enjoy doing this. So thank you everybody who's been very patient waiting for me to do new things. I still have a couple of investigator guides that I want to do. So stay tuned. If you have any requests for videos that you really like to do, please put them in the comments. And with that being said, let's talk about the Create a Card livestream from last week. So as is kind of tradition at this point, they made two new cards, upgrades from existing cards. We've seen this process a lot. A lot of the times, they are either existing cards or kind of cool concepts that FFG comes up with and then gets input from either a group of people at a convention or in recent years, especially because of COVID, live streams to make cool cards. We've seen 10 of these in print already. Most recently, we had the Flashlight level 3 and Guard Dog level 2 in the Edge of the Earth expansion. And we also have the level 3 Dragon Ball and level 2 Alice Luxley that were created but haven't been printed yet. It's worth saying that this video isn't about these cards, but if you're interested in these and maybe haven't heard of them or haven't printed them out yet, you can go to the FFG website and find them under the Print and Play Cards tab. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested. So let's talk about the two cards that were actually just created. So the two cards that were created are a upgrade to Fine Clothes, making it level 3, and an upgrade to Sword King, level 2. Starting off with the Fine Clothes, a lot of the original card is basically the same. In fact, the cost, icons, slot, soak, and the standard ability of reducing the difficulty of parlay tests has been completely the same. Traits are the same as well. The only real change is the adding of a new action ability, in which you exhaust the Fine Clothes to parlay. You choose an enemy at your location and test your lowest skill X, where X is the enemy's printed health. So that is regardless of damage or maybe encounter cards that add health to the card. No, this is purely the health that is printed on the card. If you succeed at the skill test, you can choose an ally in your hand which costs X or less and play it, ignoring all costs. I think this is a very interesting direction to take Fine Clothes in. Fine Clothes has historically been a what is known as a tech or silver bullet card. Basically, if a scenario requires you to do a bunch of parlays, you put in Fine Clothes to be very good at those. But now this has an economy ability that kind of changes the entire dynamic of the card. And keep in mind that because this because this economy ability is a parlay, you also reduce the difficulty by 2. So if the enemy has a health of, say, 2, you're actually testing against difficulties 0, but you still get to put an ally with cost 2 or less into play. So who do we want to play this card in? I think the most obvious place is Charlie King. I think Charlie's skills are all ones, so the difficulty or making having to test your lowest skill is not a problem for Charlie. He gets to buff those anyway. And Charlie wants to run lots of allies, but doesn't get any kind of economy benefit to put them out, like someone like Leo Anderson might. the fact that this is a neutral card further helps put it in Charlie, and I think, yeah, this is just generally a very nice card for Charlie Kane. Otherwise, I could see it in investigators who are inclined to leave enemies around the board. One thing that's worth pointing out is that the ability of Fine Clothes requires you to have an enemy on the board in order to activate it, and it has to be at your location. Of course, having enemies on the board is generally a bad thing. Most decks are going to want to get rid of those, but there are some investigators, like Trish Scarborough, who don't mind leaving an enemy around that they incapacitate somehow and then use to get card benefits off of. Another investigator who can perform this sort of trick is the parallel version of Roland Banks. There are a trio of directives that I think interact pretty neatly with this upgraded Fine Clothes. Those being the Due Diligence, which gives you a skill boost during Investigate, Evade, or Parlay, so you can use it to boost this test based on the number of enemies engaged with you. Likewise, the Consult Experts directive gives you an additional ally slot, which you could fill with allies put into play with Fine Clothes. And Seek the Truth is a bit more of a distanced combination, but it also rewards you for having enemies at your location. It draws you a card when you discover a clue. So all of this is, to me, puts a couple of investigators on the board, but what allies are we putting into play? And I think this is where we get into a bit of a tricky bit with the card, is we're looking at the printed health of enemies. Which means that if we have cheap allies, preferably ones with interplay effects or just effects that we can pop off very quickly, those are pretty good, because if we just have this ghoul minion, we can put a medical student into play, no problem. But no matter how much we succeed by or what we do, we can't let that ghoul minion let us put a guard dog into play, because the guard dog costs 3, and there's no way to raise the printed value of an enemy. So we're gonna have to find a bigger enemy. Fortunately, that is something we can generally do. Now, I don't necessarily know if we'll be able to go all the way up to 7 for that agency backup, but generally speaking, there are going to be a couple of bigger enemies in most encounter decks, and using cards like On the Hunt or Kicking the Hornet's Nest lets us find those. While cards like Slip Away, Handcuffs, Fend Off, or the Existential Riddle that I previewed lets us put enemies into play and kind of hold them in position without having to suffer their ill effects. I think that this card generally fits best within Guardian and Rogue card pools. Those are the card pools that most directly interact with putting enemies into play, keeping enemies in play, and otherwise having effects that trigger when you do stuff with enemies. Rogues don't really care about the economy aspect of this as much. They might like the fact that they can put allies into play without taking attacks of opportunity, because it being a parlay, this action doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. But generally speaking, I think you really want this if you're playing a Guardian who wants to play a bunch of disposable allies, because then, your economy can dry up quite quickly if you're playing multiple allies. And so even putting like 1 or 2 allies into play for free, I think is really gonna add up. I could really see this card hitting the table on some decks. I like that it's a body slot, because that does mean that it conflicts with certain other Guardian cards, like the Hunter's Armor. But yeah, I think this is a cool upgrade, and obviously it's a fantastic card for Charlie Kane. I already said as much. You want to put down lots of allies. You don't really have a built-in way of getting these allies down quicker. It's a neutral card. You can always go in your Charlie deck. He has the stat boost to pass that test. I think there are going to be Charlie decks built around this card, putting in a bunch of the cards from the Rogue and Guardian pool. So yeah, I really love this upgrade. I think it's a very unique and cool way of doing an upgrade to what was originally more of a niche card. Which brings us to Sword Cane, which was originally just a very powerful card and has just gotten a bit more powerful. The changes made to this level 2 upgrade are that it no longer costs an action to play. Instead of being an action and not provoking an opportunity, it is just straight up fast. And the reaction ability, when it enters play, also deals a damage to an enemy engaged with you. Finally, the action ability on it now gives you +1 skill value for the fight or evade you are performing. And that's kind of it, which might just be good enough, because Sword Cane 0 was a fantastic card, and Sword Cane level 2 is more of the same, which is a good thing. One thing that I really look forward to is using the fast enter play, deal a damage to an enemy engaged with you to do tricky things like killing an acolyte after spending multiple actions moving to its location, and then just plopping down the sword cane. I don't even have to take the test, and I know that I'm gonna kill this acolyte who maybe has doom on him. Or if you're dealing with something like the Wizard of the Order, who potentially has multiple doom on him, you can get 1 damage guaranteed and then hopefully pass the test to do another point of damage. The fact that this is fast really helps there, giving you an extra action to kill those perky cultists. Perky? Pesky. Sorry, I'm getting the words mixed up. One interesting question is, does this card go in Dexter Drake? So Sword Cane level 0 is a iconic Dexter Drake card because he could bypass the action cost on it using his Investigator ability. The Sword Cane already being fast means it has less of an advantage for him, but maybe that doesn't matter too much because the card is just that powerful. Not to mention you're in Mystic, so you have access to cards like Down the Rabbit Hole that reward you for upgrading your card rather than buying new stuff. Finally, it is nice to have a card that is already fast and pretty cheap in Dexter Drake. Sometimes you need assets that are kind of your setup assets, as it were. So maybe Sword Cane goes from a card that you put into play with his ability to a card that you discard to put a different card into play with your ability, right? Playing this, dealing a damage to an enemy, fighting that enemy to deal another damage, then using Dexter's ability to put a combat spell into play, fighting with that combat spell to do another 2 or 3 points of damage. Now we're talking. That's a lot of damage for very few actions, and I really like the sound of that. And everybody check off your bingo cards. It's time for me to talk about scavenging because this is an item, but it's specifically an item that has kind of a limited use or kind of a single use, right? It is its most powerful when it enters play. After that, you kind of want to get rid of it and replay it. Unless, of course, you're just using it for evasion using your willpower. But maybe there's a scavenging deck to be done here. To my knowledge, there's only 3 investigators who can take both scavenging and the sword king, those being Agnes Baker, Patrice, and Jim Culver. And I don't necessarily often play scavenging in these. Patrice has the problem that she keeps discarding her hand at the end of turn, plus, not to mention, she also usually wants her violin in her hand slot, so Sword Cane seems a bit tricky in her. But I could see a Jim or Agnes deck built around scavenging, really liking to bring Sword Cane just to get some free damage. Especially in Jim, that sounds kind of good. Tesla stuff in Jim is pretty nice because his stat line's not the best. And so you just get, a bonus point of damage guaranteed. And then maybe if you just draw a 0 or a skull, you just get to hit an enemy even though you're not that high skill value. Yeah, so in general, I'm just kind of happy with this card. It's kind of weird because I'm used to council cards being very, weird, wacky effects. And this one's just down the line, powerful, good. Yeah, I would play this card. This is a good card and it's cool. If you want to play this card, go to the FFG website. You can find the print and play documents there. Just print them out, put them in a sleeve. You get to play these. And if you don't want to use the cards in sleeves, you can always use a different card to proxy and then just keep the beta card outside of your deck. As soon as the proxy comes in, you put the beta card on top of it and you know that you've put a new card in. So yeah, that's this video. I wanted to keep this pretty short because I haven't done this in a while. I'm noticing that I'm definitely stumbling over my words a bit. I have to get back into this. But thank you for watching. I hope to do more videos soon. Again, if you're interested in this, please let me know what you want to see out of this channel in the next couple of months. And I hope you have a great game. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you until the end of time.